Hey, Peter, you are on mute.
Peter, I think you're on mute.
Okay. Welcome to week 13. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Tuesdays with Peter. And I'm Peter J. Redding, the Peter that's referred to here. I am so excited about being here today. I'm excited about our guest, our author of principle number 13 in the Positively Brilliant Self-Mastery book. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me get one more thing organized here, and then I will be all set and ready to go. And that is right here. Principle number 13 is you acknowledge and celebrate living in alignment with your innate values. I'm going to read it again. You acknowledge and celebrate living in alignment with your innate values. So a couple of things have to be put into place, and we've done that over the last couple of weeks. First of all, you have to know your innate values. You have to distinguish your innate values from your, if you will, conditioned values, those that every human being goes through in terms of adopting, adapting, assimilating, socializing, based on their external life, their external world. I'm dependent upon my mom and dad initially to be nourished, to be fed, to be housed, to be clothed, to be cleaned, etc. And so I assimilate, good, bad, or indifferent, the values of that household, that values of those caretakers. And it goes on through probably teenage years into the 20s. And I would submit to you that people that I know in their 40s, 50s, 60s also are continuing to assimilate and adapt to their external demands from social media, from mass consciousness, from what's going on in the world, for survival, for approval, for acceptance, for love, for whatever is a requirement that they have to do in order to be blank, in order to be accepted, hireable, promotable. Not all of those external values are awful or not good for an individual. I'm just making the distinction that there's some core values that are deep down inside of an individual from the get-go, from birth, maybe pre-birth, that an individual has within themselves that mostly go ignored or mostly get covered up with the external values. So coming back to today's topic of that I acknowledge and celebrate living in alignment with my core values, I have to know them, distinguish them from the not internal values or external. And number two is to acknowledge myself for, wow, I actually used those or aligned with those values in the way that I showed up, the way I am being. And so our story contributor for this chapter, Deb Waterstone, friend, colleague, awesome coach, awesome human being that wrote this back in 2008. And I think we published in January 2009, is here with us today. And I haven't talked to her or seen her in too long. I'll just say way too long. So Deb, I'm going to just have you hold for a moment, and then I'm going to go through a couple of the preliminary excerpts from the book, and then I'll get into your story and have a conversation about, so how's it going? So
okay,
welcome.
Sounds good.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
My quote again comes from Joseph Campbell. We're so engaged in doing things to achieve purposes of outer value that we forget that the inner value the rapture that is associated with being alive is what it's all about. And never having talked to the gentleman, but when I read this, it epitomized for me the differential between living from an external value world or set of values vis-a-vis the internal values. And he calls them the outer values versus the inner value. But there is a rapture, there is an excitement, there is an aliveness, there is a what I would refer to as fulfillment, deep personal fulfillment that takes place by living from those inner values. That can't be, that is not available to if I'm only living from the outer values. So I love this. I'm gonna read it again. We're so engaged in doing things to achieve purposes of outer value that we forget that the inner value, the rapture that is associated with being alive, is what it's all about. Thank you, Joseph. Love that. So word for word that comes right out of the book, some of the excerpts for the introduction of this is being your inner values. Okay, section 3 of the book. The principle completes the first cycle. This principle completes the first cycle of the self-mastery evolution. That is knowing, living, and now celebrating the fact that you are living in alignment with your innate values. To be at this stage means that you have discovered your innate values, lived in alignment with your innate values, and actually noticed when you have lived in alignment with your innate values in some part of your life. This is cause for great celebration. Woohoo! Hallelujah. When I catch myself being congruent with my innate values, I might say, I acknowledge myself for living in alignment with my innate values of connected. Or I might say, I love the way I honored my innate value of free to express in the class that I just facilitated. This principle affirms that you have consciously noticed that you did in fact live in alignment with one or more of your innate values. Acknowledging and celebrating living in alignment with your innate values reinforce the ability to honor who you are meant to be. You have also reinforced that you are capable of creating your own life in a manner that honors your divine nature. Every time you notice and celebrate being your most authentic self, you are building self-mastery. So this for me is a habit, habitual. This is about reinforcing, because I'm human, I forget. I get distracted, I get hit upside the head by life, and I forget maybe those values. So when I can acknowledge it and notice, it's like, oh, that's why that went so well. That's why it felt so good deep down inside of me. There's an inkling of congruency. There's, interesting. And every time that I can acknowledge it, it reinforces the fact that I am, or can be, if you will, in control, or at least at choice of being in alignment with my values or not, or to less of a degree or to more of a degree. That's all within my capacity as a human being. And I am reclaiming that by acknowledging myself. Yeah, good job, Peter. You did really great at being congruent with who you are created to be. Yeah. All right, so let's go. So just how good can it get? Deb, I can't wait for you to share with us. I'm going to have you read this. You can do it from the screen that I'm going to be sharing or from the copy in front of you, whichever way best serves you.
Okay.
So over to you.
Okay. I don't see the screen right now, and that's fine. I've got the copy here.
All righty.
Okay, just how good can it get? I always wanted my brother to care about me more than he seemed to show. After college, I spent a summer living in his apartment to save money for a backpacking trip. When I left, I said how I appreciated getting closer. He said he didn't feel any closer. Ouch. Throughout the next 20 years, I went back and forth with my assessment. Just when I felt he truly did care, along would come a major disconnect that reversed my decision. The mixed messages drove me crazy. I felt unloved and I wasn't sure what I was doing wrong. When I finally asked him about it, I learned that it had more to do with resentments about his upbringing than with me personally, but I still felt the impact of our separation. A number of years later, I found myself in a workshop on potential and possibilities. At dinner one night, I casually mentioned my relationship with my brother and how I accepted it was as good as it was going to get. Thank goodness they challenged me on this one. My next step felt bold and scary, but I did it anyway. That very evening, I called my brother and said I wanted a relationship with him that felt connected, real, and honest. I shared what he meant to me, and I emphasized that he didn't need to do one thing differently. I simply wanted to know if he was open to the possibility of having a closer relationship. This phone call totally transformed our relationship, and it was amazingly simple. Honoring my values helped me reach out, connect from my heart, and open the door to new possibilities for my brother and me. Today, I make a conscious effort to align all aspects of my life with my core values of profound connection, authenticity, fun, freedom, and fluidity. I've learned that the more aligned I am with these values, the more fulfilled I feel. My deep knowing of these values give me cause to celebrate every day of my life. I wonder, just how good can it get?
Yeehaw! Absolutely fabulous. Absolutely. What a powerful story.
Thank you,
Oh,
Peter.
let me readjust one thing here. I thought I had it already, but apparently not. And we're going to go a little wonky here just from the audio video. Okay. Transformed into self-mastery. I love that story. I loved it then. I love it. I think I even love it more now. So as you read this story again today, this is 10 years later, 12 years later. How does it sit with you?
Well, it's been interesting. I'm so glad that you invited me to do this because it did give me a chance to revisit it. And as always, I start processing and thinking about things. And interestingly, I guess, had never shared this story with my brother. And when this was coming up to do this podcast with you, I shared with him that I was going to be doing this, and why I wanted to share that with him was because it just brought back the memory of this. And it was such a, like I said in the story, a transforming moment, really. And it was exciting for both of us. And so I was just telling him how I was enjoying the memory. And he said, "Oh, I didn't see the story attached. I guess I shared an email." Well, I hadn't attached the story. I didn't know, if he wanted to read it. And it is, it's a little vulnerable. So anyway, I shared it with him, and that was just nice. And I've had other thoughts about this process, but that was one enjoyable moment.
Outstanding, really outstanding. So he's still active and alive and kicking and communicating and.
Yes, I mean, our relationship has just been, he's a very, he can be a hard to reach kind of guy, and, very in his head, very intellectual, and, and very introverted, and I'm very extroverted. So discovering who we could be together over all this time. And recently he even said, because he had a couple of back surgeries, and I don't remember what brought it up, but he shared with me that I was like a big part of his emotional he got a lot of his emotional sustenance from me, at least of his siblings. And
Mhm.
I was kind of shocked actually to hear that, but we just stay connected regularly. And I think I really saw by revisiting this story what it was that made it positively brilliant for me. And
It is positively brilliant. It really is. It's the power of knowing your core values, which you obviously did, and being attuned to wanting to continue to be aligned with that, even in a struggle or a difficult relationship that had been not, it's very vulnerable. And I really want to honor the vulnerability of this in terms of sharing it then and sharing it again now. But by honoring who you be, the core beingness of Deb Waterstone, and knowing that, and then bringing it to the relationship, changed everything.
it did. And Peter, I think what stood out to me as I was reflecting on it more recently is that, and this is what to me makes it positively brilliant, is I really opened to my heart and my desire, and like you say, the vulnerability of that, and was willing to share that with him with no expectation of something he had to do, which really freed him up. Because I remember the phone call where he said, yes, I'm open to this. I don't know if I can do or be who you need me to be, something like that. And I was like, no, you don't need to do anything different. You just be you. I'm just, opening the possibility of what there is for us. So yeah, the heart and desire, I can be in my head a lot too. So that was just, I think, really made this whole experience possible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I get I guess what part of the power that I'm even hearing now afresh or anew is the each human being has their own emotional comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Or lack of comfort zone. So some people are very narrow and some people may be more wide. But regardless of that, by you honoring your core values of heart-centeredness and all of those things, it opened up a door of possibility for the other person that wasn't there before, because it sounds like that wasn't his language, that wasn't his style, that wasn't his way of operating. And so you honored that. You don't have to change, but I want to open my heart to having a better relationship, closer relationship, whatever you're ready, willing, and able to do. It doesn't matter. But for me, you made the first step. You honored who you are. And it opens up possibilities that others don't. It's like from I'm projecting here, and I'll admit that, but my sense is that maybe from his point of view, or a person like your brother, it's not safe. I don't know if they're going to accept me. I don't know if there's I have to shield myself, or I have to do whatever. And you throw the door wide open and say, I love you just the way you are. And here we are 12 years later, and yeah, all the things that have happened maybe could not have happened until that point in time that you did that. You were able to do that. You're able to be that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I had to kind of be literally pushed into it. I was very resistant myself in that particular workshop. And I just was matter of fact, no, that's not someone I can do this little exercise with. That guy isn't, nothing's going to change there. And so I had to be willing to, release a bunch of my own resistance just to make a phone call. And yeah, it has, I mean, I've had some real challenges over these last few years with some stuff, and he just has just been there for me 500%. Maybe he would have been anyway, because he's just that kind of guy, you know, that shows up when things are tough. But you know, it wasn't just the showing up, it was what we got to have together during that time. And you know, and now I'm trying to be there for him after his, you know, couple of surgeries and the way that I can. And yeah, it just, like you say, and I think without being in touch with my values, I'm not sure I could have gone there either. Even if I wasn't super conscious of it in that moment, those are the values I live, and they've never changed from the time all those years ago in Coach for Life when I identified them so magnificently. They just still feel very true. The acknowledging is, I'll be interested to talk a little more about that because that's another step to just knowing my values. And that's been a different kind of experience.
Well, let's get into a couple of the tangential things that are going on here. Okay, so this is obviously a beautiful and vulnerable opening with, you know, siblings. Okay, brother, sister. How have understanding your values and acknowledging them or reinforcing them over the years worked in other parts of your life, in your career, in your other relationships, and with yourself, and anything that you've noticed from that regard?
Yeah, great question. They definitely have played out in my career, which has been primarily in the arena of workplace performance, you know, spending probably about the last 25 years or so doing that, most of that time with my own business. And so I really had some flexibility to play things out in a way that worked for me. I would say when I got into coaching, which I started with Coach for Life, I believe it was 2002, and then went on to get credentialed and all that. And that was life-changing for me, actually, attending that program, totally life-changing, another one of those milestone experiences. And through the coaching, I really got to live into my values, the way I could connect with clients and not only be my authentic self, but really support and celebrate their authentic selves, and more. And then, you know, really what happened circumstantially is that over time, things got, you know, as many things with technology, got more virtual, and the way that I could be in business with my business was really shifting, and not so much with the coaching, but with the consulting side of my business, which was the major part of it. And so I just was getting more and more isolated. Like, yeah, I can do all this work at home, and I got my computer, and I got my phone, and I got my emails, and oh, where are my peeps? Where are my peeps? And profound connection is my number one value, always has been. So I just decided probably about 5 years ago to just only do a few select things, facilitation types of and coaching types of things. And I got a part-time job working in an elementary school. And I love kids. I've always loved kids. So talk about how my values have played out. I just felt like I was in my joy place there. I loved it. You know, it was kind of hard work, but really every day was a joyful experience for me. So they really played out there. And then unfortunately, at the end of the second school year, I developed a blood infection, which was a very weird thing. We don't know how, but anyway, so I had to, obviously I had to immediately, I was gone from the job. And then that, then I developed from that, as a result, a fractured vertebra, which sent me into surgery. And during surgery, the surgeon nicked my spinal cord, and that resulted in nerve damage. And so it's been, talk about some life-changing. I mean, I'm okay, but there's some limitations as a result. And so the last 3 years have really been all about recovery on the different levels, physical, obviously first, and ongoing, and then just all the depth of stuff that comes when we have these kinds of experiences. So my values, as I was reflecting on all this, have really remained intact, but the way that they play out externally, some of that obviously has shifted. And so then acknowledging them, which already I'm not sure I was doing so great at the acknowledging step, which is what's been great about revisiting this. Like, yeah, Deb, do you do that? I think I get acknowledged by feeling the way my values are playing out, or by other people, acknowledging them. But I don't know that I've done such a great job of consciously speaking to them the way some of the examples you were sharing. So that's going to change now. But I guess my point is, it's different. It's almost a little trickier to acknowledge them when they're playing out in a different way, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. So two takeaways that I'm getting from this is, number one, the values themselves haven't changed.
Right.
That they're as solid and as true and as accurate and as pointed and as meaningful as they were, literally 20 years ago, right? You said 2002, I think, which sounds about right to me. So literally 20 years later, exactly the same values. And I'm in a different part in life. Things are happening to me physically. Things are happening to me in terms of isolation. Things are happening to me in terms of this, that, and the other. And the values are intact. So the way that you said, I think the words you use, is how they're playing out is different. And the reminder for today's episode here is, am I acknowledging myself? Do I remember to do that? And as a human being, I forget. And I teach it, I've created it, and I forget. So I'm like, okay, so how can I remember to remember? How can I remember to acknowledge? How can I remember to celebrate? Hip hip for me. I am still being 100% Deb Waterstone. I am being 100% Peter Redding. I'm being 100% whoever you are. And I'm living in congruency with these core values in maybe new ways, maybe new expressions. And that feeds my soul. That's my experience. It feeds my soul. It's like, yeah. Now, would I like to have circumstances different with this relationship, or with my relationship with me, or my physicality, or my ability to go back and work with the kids in schools or do that work? Yeah. And I can still be me. That's my bottom line. I'm curious about what's your bottom line in terms of, as things shift, as things change, as things morph. Do you still get the same deep satisfaction when you do or remember to acknowledge yourself?
Well, like I say, I haven't been so great at doing that acknowledging. So I am looking forward to the deep satisfaction. I think the challenge, but I'm looking forward to this part as well, is, for example, if fun is one of my values, well, the way I can have fun might be a little different. Like, I really, really love pickleball, and I didn't discover it till last year, and I already had my dealing with some of my limitations. So it's like, okay, well, I can't run on the court, and there's certain things I can't do, but I love it. I can play it. I've always loved racket sports. But sure enough, at some point, I got a little injury in my leg from stretching, trying to get that ball and stretching too far, because I can't run after it, but I'm going to reach as far as I can. Ouch, so no, it was nothing serious. But the point is, that's an example of, well, I guess I can acknowledge, hey, I'm still going after fun. I'm with these people. It's a great group. I am getting to do a sport that I enjoy. my physical therapist really is not happy. He doesn't want me playing. And I understand. And I'm not sure, if I'm going to continue, but that's an example of where, well, if I don't continue with that, and what are things that I'm doing that I can still say, well, good for you. You had fun. Sometimes just being with people, that's fun. And for me to remember, not sometimes, oftentimes that feeds me a lot, doing something, just connecting with people. And that also feels fun because I get to have an experience with them. So to really remember, just because I can't have that other fun that feels obviously fun, to acknowledge that I'm finding the ways that I can now, for any of the values. I'm just using that as an example. So it feels important, and that's why I'm so glad this has come up again, because even through our difficulties, whatever they may be for each person, I feel like those values, for me, they've remained intact. It's just there's been a bit of an erosion for how they play out, like I say, externally. And that just means I need to readjust to how I acknowledge them, what I notice and how I acknowledge them.
Love that. Absolutely love that. It's one of the things I think that's a precious gift of life, is that this is my way of being. So was it expressed at a younger age, and running after that tennis ball, or that that badminton or whatever that was that you were having a racket in your hand, and now it's pickleball, and now it might be just sitting on the side watching it and being a spectator and being in a camaraderie and a communion with the people that are sitting on either side of the bench from you. So the beingness is lifelong. The expression of that beingness, or the circumstances of that beingness, might have different doingness couching it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the doingness, we'll get into that in another chapter in the book that talks about the doingness of life. But now we're in the depths of the beingness of life, and the value doesn't change, but the how it happens, where it happens, with whom it happens, will morph according to your physicality, stage of life, occupation, people that are around you. All of that can change from day to day even. But I don't have to give up my own way of being.
Yeah.
I love Peter Redding. I love Peter Redding here. I love Peter Redding when I'm talking to a sibling. I love Peter Redding in front of a classroom. I love Peter Redding talking with my dear sweet Marcia, and going to Downton Abbey's new movie and just celebrating my way of being in that particular scenario. And I think that's a gift that most people don't know about or don't even think about. And so I love the narrative of it. It's different now because physical therapist doesn't want me to be running out there in the pickleball court to get the corner shot, and but I can still be joyous regardless.
Yes. And I think it's easy. Well, I can speak for myself. It's easy to not recognize our own brilliance or the way we're playing out our values, to put it simply, the way we're living them and expressing them and how they're impacting others. When right after this invitation came to do this, I was down in North Carolina doing some visiting and facilitation experience. And I was telling my friend, dear friend, she's known me for many, many years, and she was very involved with me through this whole injury and, the aftermath. And so she's been there with the whole experience. And I said, yeah, I don't know if I can do this podcast. Look at my life and look at how different, and I don't know, blah, 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 whatever. And she's like, what? Are you kidding? She says, you've been through this very difficult kind of time in your life, and yet you continued to be your values and be who you are. And I don't know if she used that word values, but you are just being your most authentic self, and the way you've dealt with this whole experience. Anyway, she was just showering me with her own acknowledgement. And it was the very thing that had me shift and go, wait, maybe I'm being overly subjective, too much in my own whatever that I'm thinking, and not really recognizing what has been there even during, especially those first 2 years, pretty challenging time. So I was like, well, thank you. Okay, maybe I will do the podcast, but more importantly, and I'm so glad, because it's just brought up great reflection for me with all of this. And that feels important too, for us to maybe have that opportunity, reflect on the values, reflect on how we're acknowledging, and, the very beauty of your book that brings all that out. So yeah, sometimes we just need to get it from others to wake us up to our own acknowledgement.
Well, thank your friend for me.
I will.
On behalf
Okay.
of all of us that are here or will be viewing this in the future years, thank you, friend, for getting Deb to wait a minute. Yeah, but the other piece of what you bring up is again kind of the harshness of self-judgment, or am I living up to the principle of this one completely? Have I let go of it? Am I doing it as well as I should be? All that should coming back into the inner languaging, the inner dialogue, and getting through that, and giving yourself what is rightfully yours to do and to give. And only you can do that. I mean, your friend stimulated it and kind of jogged. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Proverbially slapped you upside the head and go, what are you talking about? You're awesome, girl. So go back and claim it. And so again, part of the conditioning that I went through for many, many years, hell, decades in my upbringing was don't be bragging on yourself. It's not okay. Don't be hubris. Don't be congratulating yourself. Don't be patting yourself on the back. I mean, all the things that are attached to acknowledgement. And I find that it's worldwide. It wasn't my parents, because apparently everybody else's parents around the world also had that same manual. and have taught their kids, just be a hard worker, contribute to society, stay on a straight and narrow, and be a good kid, right? Fair enough. And part of what's been lost in the generations, I think, has been, it's not just okay to acknowledge yourself for being yourself. In this case, honoring my values and the way my values showed up to support me to do my work here on the planet, but actually celebrate it. And to have that sense of, oh, it's not just okay to celebrate myself, it's almost mandatory to celebrate myself so that I can continue with doing the work I'm here to do. And it leads right into the life purpose stuff that we're going to get into in the next 4 weeks. The next month is going to be all around the life purpose. So if I don't do that for myself, then I withdraw my talents, my values, my contribution to the planet, or whatever part of the planet that I happen to be here to inspire or instruct or inform. And it doesn't honor my creator. It's basically saying, if I take it literally from my programming as a child, it's not okay to be your magnificent self. You need to be humble. You can't be out there shouting to the gods or to the neighbors that, hey, I'm a great human being. And so that is a detriment to this particular one and the other two that will be coming up in terms of celebrating my innate nature, my positively brilliant self as it shows up in my way of being, which is today's episode, or my contribution to the planet, which is all about life purpose for me. or about utilizing my natural gifts and talents, which are extraordinary and have been endowed to me by my creator, is what I believe. And to be able to celebrate those out loud to myself to reinforce, I do have the capacity to do this. I do have the capacity to be that loving sister, or be that loving teacher, or be that loving pickleball partner. Regardless of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, where I'm doing it, with whom I'm doing it, I get to celebrate that. And so the celebration is inherently embodied into this principle of I have to acknowledge myself, to reinforce that within me, not again from a place of, aren't I fantastic? Aren't I great? No, but to continue this journey of life of being true to myself. And as every time that I reinforce that from something that's inside of me, as opposed to trying to do it from an external thing, the internal one, it's kind of like a clarion bell. It's like the tuning fork that goes bing. And there's a resonance of expanding that within me, as opposed to shrinking and saying, oh, I'm sorry for being myself. I'm sorry for being brilliant. I'm sorry for being so compassionate. I'm sorry for wanting to have the camaraderie that I'm here to provide for the person sitting next to me on the bus. So I don't know. I'd be curious in terms of your upbringing, Deb, because I know nothing about it, basically. So, and if you don't want to share it, that's fine too. But with some of those messages there in terms of it's not okay to be awesome, it's not okay to celebrate yourself, it's not okay to acknowledge yourself or your achievements or who you're being or all of that. Did you get any of that programming when you were a kid or growing up into your teens and early 20s?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I love what you're saying and the connection to, I just hadn't thought about it this way, but the importance of celebrating. I mean, it's just so obvious with your book and the sequence as well, but it's really connecting for me now of celebrating who we're being and our values to foster the purposeful way we want to be in life. And I look at that again for myself. I'm in my later 60s. I am working, part-time again, not in the school, but, just as my life has shifted, how can I repurpose my own experience? I could go another 30 years, and maybe not, but who knows? So I just really see the importance of that. I think in terms of my own upbringing, I don't remember specifically being told not to do that, but I don't remember it being fostered at all. I just remember the expectations always seemed to be high, but there wasn't it was never enough kind of thing. So certainly there wasn't the reinforcement of, wow, awesome. I think my parents were more kind of self-indulgent with their own lives, and they had these 4 kids and we had lots of neat experiences, but it wasn't, it was just maybe, taught me a lot about where I wanted to go from there. And it wasn't any horrible childhood by any means, but I don't feel like that good stuff was really nurtured in a way that you're speaking to what could be, or hopefully generationally as we move forward, more consciousness to do that.
Yeah. And I didn't have an awful childhood either. It's like, I've said it many times, my parents were loving parents. They were doing the best they knew how in their 20s. I mean, I look back at it and go, oh my God, they had me when they were 21 and 20 and 21, or 21 and 22. It's like, oh my God. And so they never woke up, I don't think, in the morning and say, okay, so what can we do to screw up Peter so he needs therapy at 35? It's like, I don't know of any parent that would do that. And they want the best for their kids, and their methodologies are completely different. I've heard, I'm going to beat you into submission so that you're a good child and you know how to be tough when you grow up. And that wasn't my experience. It was my parenting. So they have different approaches to it. But by and large, worldwide, it hasn't been a common theme of, yeah, my parents always said, be proud of who you are and acknowledge that, and please celebrate that every step of the way. Typically doesn't happen. That part has not been reinforced. And so all I'm saying is, anyone that's listening to this or tuning into this, is it's not just okay to celebrate yourself, the core self, positively brilliant self, created endowment self. I think it's mandatory to fulfill your life's work, to have the strength, the tenacity, the wherewithal, the encouragement, the let go of the hesitancy of, is this my work to do? If it's your work to do, damn it, get about doing it, and acknowledge every step of what you're contributing, because that then just, again, one of the principles, Deb, and Coach for Life, is focusing on what is working. So if it's working, to acknowledge yourself and celebrate that and remind myself, oh, wait a minute, I've been given this talent, I've been given this value to show up and be free to express. It's one of mine.
And what occurs to me when you say that is that the way, again, I'll just speak for myself, the way I can show up when I do that, it doesn't have to always be this huge thing. If I'm acknowledging my values, I'm just seeing the brilliance of that right there with even the smallest of things. So that purpose, the way we are purposeful can come out in many different ways. So I'm just kind of being reminded of that. And I'm also wondering if I can ask you a question.
Sure.
Curious, given what you shared about your background and what you were taught, what do you feel helped you make that shift? And maybe it was over time, I don't know, but it shift into finding a different way of being with that.
What a great question. You must have been trained as a professional coach somewhere along the way.
By this amazing organization. Yes, I was. Thank you.
Okay, so being totally self-serving there. I think the shift for me was that I felt exhausted, spent in a way of there's nothing left for me to give at the age of 35. I was done. I was like, I've mentioned several times that I felt that I was like a 70-year-old man that had worked double shift. And I probably had put in enough working hours at the age of 35 that most people do in an entire lifetime. And so there's a sense of giving until there was nothing left inside of me to give. And there was some message that came through for me is there's something fundamentally wrong with this life. There's something fundamentally wrong in terms of how I'm navigating this thing called life. Now, I couldn't even articulated that piece of it back in those days, because I was in it wasn't a deep depression, but if I look back on it now, it was in a deep sense of what the hell am I here for? And again, that very existential thing that I think happens with most people who have any sense of consciousness at all, at whatever age that happens. Of why am I here? What am I doing? How does my life make a difference? All those kinds of questions. And that put me into a deep place of exploration. A lot of it was through 12-step work. And of course, being an overachiever and an overworker at that stage, I was in 3 groups at the same time. So I did 36 steps. Like most people do 12. I did 36. But that's the only way I knew how to navigate at that stage. A lot of it was reading, especially around codependency, because that was a big linchpin for me of, I'm here for your welfare and your life, but not mine. So you're first and foremost, and there is no second after that. So there's a lot of deep work that I did there. And I finally got to the point where they kicked me out of the lifetime. I had a lifetime membership in, codependence. I was the next, I think I was probably 2 steps away from being a global president of codependence. So when I changed all of that, they kicked me out of the club. You're not a codependent. You're not a good representation of that anymore. So I started taking self-responsibility, and that's what led me to, all the stuff that has come through me. It has truly come through me, not from me. I feel like I've been a channel of God's work or my creator's work to bring this message that life can be different. Life can be dramatically different if you know who you are and you start operating from that place. So that was, concentrated wise, it was probably 4 or 5 years of going through that and not happy with it at all, frankly. It's like, okay, give me back my ignorance and, blissful ignorance. This is just too damn hard. It was gut wrenching for me. Since then, it's been, I couldn't have imagined at 35 what it was like at 45. I just could not. It was a different world that was completely unknown to me, and it's gotten better and better ever since. So there's more insightfulness, there's more vitality, there's more excitement. You talk about the next 30 years. I'm going for the next 37 years. I'm in my 3rd trimester. Starting this year, I'll be in my 3rd trimester.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's a lot of what I think I went through. Does that kind of answer part of it for you in terms of, what my journey was or how I shifted?
Yeah, thank you. I just, it's always interesting to me how any of us choose to move through life and what barriers we run into and how we, go forward with them. There's no right or wrong way, but I'm always intrigued by that. So thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure. Yeah, it is. Every human being is unique, and therefore every human being has a unique journey.
And I do want to, speaking of acknowledgement, acknowledge you for having, even if circumstances help with that, having your own sort of wake up call to yourself and being willing to go through the extreme challenges of getting to a next place for yourself. Clearly that took a lot of hard work as well, but it was devoted to you and not maybe some more external forces. And here you've been for so many of us for so many years. And I'm so grateful for the journey you decided to take with that.
Thank you. I thank you. I really received that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We've got some of our regulars here. I just want to kind of open it up to any comments of things things that you learned today or things that you got reminded of today through the graciousness of Deb being here. So Sunny, Rajiv, Charles, Arshna, anyone want to kind of chime in? And Sunny, you've unmuted yourself. Let me pin you. There you go.
Thank you for a great session. Thanks, Deb, for sharing your experience. For me, I think what I'm taking is that the values are somewhere for your higher self and not the ego.
Yeah.
And that is why, as you acknowledge, you are almost not feeding the ego, but maybe offering gratitude um, to allow these to flow through you, something like that. So I think because when I heard that whether it is it's me who is conditioned by something, I think it is actually that I am not open to receiving acknowledgement by myself. So I will think that, oh, it will feed my ego rather than my upbringing or things like that. But I think maybe gratitude is, at least I feel, my answer to how I can keep acknowledging myself, because these values actually help to go beyond the ego. So that was one. And maybe I have a question if, Deb, if I
Yeah.
can ask
Yeah.
you.
Yes, please.
Just on your, your story with your brother, do you think there was a time either in childhood where you were exhibiting these values, and did it kind of have that fracture in between because of something, and then you took it up again with this? So if there's something on the childhood, because when we are children, there is less conditioning. So is there some light around that if you can throw on the relationship, and especially from the values perspective, do you remember having them at that time?
So, Sunny, thank you for the question. I want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you asking if maybe those values were showing up in that relationship in earlier years?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, wow, that's a fun thing to reflect on. You know, I imagine that I was living those things as I was growing up. My brother had an incredibly, according to him, difficult childhood and really felt out of place in a lot of ways in general, with his family, with his culture. And so he had to find he had to go some different ways to find his own freedom, if you will, his own self-expression. So I think I pretty much stayed true to who I was, and that's what made it difficult over the years when I was checking. I'd go, oh, we're connected. That always felt so important. That was maybe the word I used. And then, oh, oops, oh, we're not. So for me, that was always my foundation of what I was maybe seeking and expressing in my own way. But then when I felt him pulling away, oh, I guess I have to pull away. And that's not congruent with who I am. So that's how it was for many years. So I'm going to reflect on that more. And I may even ask him sometime, hey, how did I appear to you over the years? Because it's hard to be real objective about that. But I love the question. And I think maybe it was there and I just really allowed myself to expand on it all the more by opening up the conversation between us in a new way. If that makes sense, I hope.
It
Did I
does.
answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. And I'm also thinking what would have happened, because I have a sibling, and like, you kind of figure out whether how you are, but it's a good reflection for me as well. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Sonny, for a great question. You too must have been trained as a great coach somewhere along the way. Very profound questioning. And we're at time, so I'm going to bring this to a close and thank Sonny and Charles and Rajiv and Arshna that came today. Thank you so much in the inner room here. And Deb, I've loved you from the time that we met to now and beyond. So I am thrilled to reconnect in a deep way today. Thank you for your presence, for your story, for your living your core values in all the different ways that you're doing it now, and sharing your story with the rest of the world. I so appreciate you and honor you for that.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. I'm receiving. And so great to be here and connect with you as well.
Thank you. So that'll wrap it up for our episode today. Come back next week. We talk about the next episode, next section. The next 4 weeks will be devoted towards the sense of core purpose, life purpose. Like, why am I here? What am I doing? How does my life make a difference? And so look forward to seeing you next week. And so, as I always say, God bless. Namaste. Be safe. See you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.